Hey everybody, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse, and you're watching the Patreon bonus stories.
All right, so you're probably wondering, as we talked about during Tesla Time News today, Tesla is opening their supercharger network in Europe, in the US, and now in China. And the reason they're doing this is not just to be nice and to speed up the transition to sustainable transportation, but it's also because it will make money, lots of money. So Tesla is already building the network for their own fleet. That's number one. It's not 100% utilized. That's a very important point here. You build a supercharging network, there's a bunch of stalls sitting there every day, and for a big section of the day, they're just sitting there with no cars at them. That's not good. If you make a product or a thing, you want it to be utilized 100%. So by opening this up to non-Tesla EVs, you get to maximize the utility of the thing that you already paid for. So check out my back of the napkin math here and let me know your thoughts, because this is just back of the napkin math. And by the way, we did a whole in-depth about the power of back of the napkin math. And if you're like, well, how powerful could it be, Zach? Well, Elon and JB, they sat down at a restaurant one day before Elon joined Tesla, and they took out a napkin and they started talking about batteries and how many you'd need and how many gigafactories. And by the end of this conversation, they had a freaking napkin that was the future of Tesla. And boom, first gigafactory, the rest is history. So, okay, this is assuming Tesla opened all of their stalls today.
Okay.
I took 45,569 Tesla supercharger stalls. That's how many they have throughout the world. I assumed that each stall would get used 8 hours a day by a non-Tesla EV. That leaves the other 2/3 of the day, 16 hours, to be used by Teslas. Now, I know that won't happen today because there aren't enough EVs, but it could happen in a few years because that would be roughly 750,000 to 1 million non-Tesla EVs a day globally. And that's a very reasonable number. I assumed that the average charging speed is 150 kilowatts. That's because many superchargers are 250, and most are 250. Some are only 150. Most cars can't charge that fast, especially if your battery's not ready for it. So argue about that if you want, but that's what I used. So that would be 1,200 kilowatt hours of electricity per stall per day going into non-Tesla EVs. Okay, then I multiplied 45,569 stalls to get by that 1,200 kilowatt hours to get 54,682,800 kilowatt hours per day from the whole supercharger network charging non-Tesla EVs. Then I said to myself, it doesn't really matter what the cost of electricity is in any particular place because Tesla will just do what all charging networks do. They'll tack on a percentage for themselves. So let's say that I just picked 2 cents per kilowatt hour. It could be more, it could be less. But in some markets, that's a 10% markup. In other markets, that's a 5% markup. So I was like, that sounds right, pretty reasonable. So I stuck with 2 cents. That gets you $1,093,656 per day globally in profit, basically, if you open up the supercharger network to non-Tesla EVs. That's $400 million a year. There's more to say on this, but I'll discuss it on Investor Club bonus stories today because I think that this has a way bigger impact than most people are thinking about.
All right.
So let's go to this. I thought this was important. This is Euro's NCAP testing video, which shows a whole bunch of EVs, some you've probably never even heard of, testing out their AEB, which is their automatic emergency braking systems. And it's being tested on simulated incidents. So that's where you take like a cardboard, or a stuffed dummy and you walk it across the street. And you also do the same thing with a bicycle. And you test out how well the car would avoid hitting a pedestrian or a cyclist. So watch this, but wait for the Model Y at the end, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Oh.
So did you stay to the end? Did you see the Model Y and how well that did? And I just want to point this out. Timmy said, not all active safety systems are created equal. Even with the 5-star category, these are cars within the 5-star category, by the way. There can be considerable differences in the effectiveness of assistance systems like automatic emergency braking. And Elon said, we fixed the remaining 2%. So did you notice in that one case where it kind of just nicked the cyclist? They've, according to Elon, have fixed that. I just want to point out all those other cars, the ones that Consumer Reports said were so great, they all nailed, like just went right through the pedestrians and the cyclists. There's hardly any cases where they even seem to slow down. Wow. Where's the Model Y? Now, here's my other question. Why didn't it go fail, 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 fail until it got to the Tesla and then say pass?
They were like 70%, 60%, 80%. And then the Model Y was 82%?
And that's the thing. What these systems do is they measure a bunch of things that don't matter and they equally weigh them. So it's like if I said to you, oh, did you get out of bed this morning? Check. Did you brush your hair? Check. Like all these things that don't really matter. And then at the end, it's like, did you finish the report on time? No. Okay. Well, you got the other 4 things right. So it's an 80%. Like ridiculous in my opinion.
Yeah.
Then this infographic, which I think is pretty important here, the number of vehicular accidents per million miles in 2022. So very recent data. 0.18 for Tesla vehicles where autopilot engaged, mostly highway miles. 0.31 Tesla vehicles with full self-driving engaged, mostly non-highway miles. 0.68 Tesla vehicles with no active safety on. And 1.53 is the total U.S. vehicle fleet. So the bigger the numbers, the bigger the number of accidents per million miles. Mm-hmm. So again, we kind of talked before of how Tesla is at some point going to be able to turn on full self-driving because they're going to be able to show that this data is safer than a human. And we're already getting there.
I also just want to talk about a huge advantage that Tesla has. Mm-hmm. If you notice, the no active safety is still vastly safer. Tesla is starting with a vastly safer platform than most cars on the road.
And I know what some of you are asking, well, how's that possible if there's no active safety? Well, because things like braking and control of the vehicle are so much better in a Tesla that you are actually able to control it and not get into accidents just because of the driving characteristics.
If you've ever gotten pulled into, watching dash cam crashes or anything like that, mm-hmm. you'll notice that a lot of crashes on the highway will occur when there's a heavy braking incident. And so either someone's getting brake checked or the whole highway is stopping. But anyway, if somebody slams on the brake, all the weight of the car gets shifted to the front, mm-hmm. Where most of the weight is anyway, because you got the engine. Mm-hmm. So then the back wheels start to just lose traction and they mm-hmm. start to skid around. As soon as you start to break that lateral traction, all traction with the wheel, but once you start to not have lateral friction, the car just goes whoop, and the back slides out in front of the front, which is trying to slow down.
Right, because don't forget, many times when you're braking, you're not just braking straight, you're also doing a right. tight turn.
And so you'll see it on the highway where people get into these like, whoa, 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 because they can't balance the car. A Model 3, Model Y, Model X, Model S, doesn't matter. They all have almost a perfect center of mass,
yes.
meaning that the center of mass of the car is way further back. Mm-hmm. That means that it's going to keep more weight on the rear tires when you slam on the brakes. And the other thing, too, is that it's the center of mass is lower. Everything about it, mm-hmm. Just about the dynamics is better. You throw on vastly better suspension on all of their cars. Well, Model Y, Model 3 have double wishbone suspension. It's noticeably better. When I drive around on the Ford, holy crap, the number of times where I can get wheels to slip.
Yeah.
You might be saying, well, Jesse, you just said it has a great center of mass, and the Ford does. It's fairly low compared to most pickup trucks. It's in the center of the car, which helps. But again, the suspension. So Tesla has why do you think they made the safest car? If they wanted to make the cheapest EV, they could do that.
Yep.
You could have the ID4, right? It has a McPherson strut suspension. It's nice and cheap to produce. They didn't do that.
Yeah.
They made a safe vehicle so that way, once you throw on a little bit of full self-driving, it doesn't have to worry if the car is going to start to sway on the highway.
Right.
It doesn't have to worry about that. Just applies the brakes, comes to a stop. It's
really
nice when you drive, but it's also really nice when the computer is doing it because it doesn't have to worry about all the craziness.
2 points to that, which is when we started driving other EVs like the ID4 especially,
and the Mach-E.
And the Mach-E, they just felt like crap, and it was just like,
what is
wait,
wrong with these cars?
Yeah. And it's because Tesla was able to, they built it from the ground up. Second one is tire contact. Tesla's always used relatively big tires, whereas other manufacturers try and get by with thinner tires to get better range. Tesla kind of gave up on that. I think because they realized contact with the ground is super important, so they were willing to give up some of that efficiency. It's kind of like Tesla margins. Their margins are so good on their cars that they can give up some of the margins if they want to lower the price. Whereas when you're like Ford or GM and you have no margins, you can't give up on that. So Tesla's so great in other areas of efficiency. They're like, hey, we can make a fatter tire, get you more contact on the road, which means better braking and handling. But yeah, we'll lose a little range because they already have amazing efficiency. All right, let's go to this. This is pretty cool. This is a video of the ECR25. It's a Volvo electric excavator, and it's being brought to the top of a mountain. Let's check this.
Im Zusammenhang mit dem Neubau der Schildhornbahn sind wir hier beauftragt worden, Aushubarbeiten und Betonierarbeiten zu vollbringen. Der Bagger hat die Aufgabe, der gesprengte Fels, das Schuttmaterial wegzuräumen und zu verladen, weil wir eigentlich das Material nicht über die Kante liegen lassen dürfen, sondern wir müssen das Ganze an den vorbestimmten Ort transportieren. Wir haben uns überlegt, dass wir einen Bagger brauchen, den wir fliegen können. Das war eine Grundvoraussetzung. Das Gewicht durfte nicht zu groß sein und auch die Fläche. Wir arbeiten auf sehr engem Raum. Und dann war es auch wichtig, dass die Fläche nicht zu groß war, die wir bedecken. Und dann war diese 2,5 Tonnen Lösung eigentlich die beste Lösung für uns. In den Bergen haben wir das Problem, wenn wir mit Diesel arbeiten, dass wir Probleme haben, die Dieselmotoren zu starten aufgrund der Kälte und der dünnen Luft. Und da bietet sich natürlich eine elektrische Version an, weil die da keine Probleme hat. Zusätzlich ist es sicher die Nachhaltigkeit vom Ganzen und auch das Nicht-Vorhandensein der Abgase. Auch für die Leute, die da arbeiten, die Dieselmotoren, die in der Höhe arbeiten, haben sehr starken Dieselrauch und das möchten wir unseren Arbeitern eigentlich nicht antun. Wir laden hier einerseits über die normale Energieversorgung, Steckdose und haben auch die Möglichkeit, über ein Schnellladegerät, wenn wir mal den Notfall haben, das zu betreiben oder wieder zu laden, so muss ich das sagen. Es gibt keinen anderen Anbieter in dieser Gewichtsklasse und ich denke, das Produkt ist gut und zuverlässig. Bei uns ist zum Bauen auch Nachhaltigkeit ein sehr großes Thema.
Yeah, so I mean, I know that they chose it for mainly the reason that it was light enough to get up there. But once they were up there, they did find out that it's really nice for the workers not having to listen to it or smell it the whole time. And I just thought this was really cool. The more we show stuff like this to other people, that like, hey, like just show it to your construction buddy. Because if they see that it exists and they see that, whoa, it works at the top of a mountain where a diesel would have had trouble even running.
Starting.
And, you know, cold conditions and all that. I think it's just important to show that these things work, and we're going to see more and more of them. Yeah. So check out this video. So this is a Model S in Spokane, Washington, and check it out.
Welcome back. Tonight we are speaking to a car owner who says a man just randomly poured gasoline on his Tesla and lit it on fire.
Well, thanks to the car's surveillance video, the crime was all caught on camera. KREM 2's Janelle Finch shows us that incredible video now.
There's a guy walking up with 2 canisters. He literally douses my car in whatever the liquid is, seems like gas, and sets it on fire.
It's hard to believe someone would set another person's car on fire for no reason. But that's what J.R. Harrison says happened to him.
I can't fathom myself wanting to set fire to anything for any political reason, whatever. I don't get it.
He says he traveled from the west side to visit his friend at the Serrano Apartments in North Spokane. He had no idea that by the end of his visit, he'd be needing a ride home. This all happened while Harrison says he was sleeping. But when he reviewed the footage captured by these cameras on his Tesla, that's when he learned the full story.
I've only had that car for about a year and some change, but it's my dream car. You know, I saved up for that car just to watch it back and see the car go up in flames and see what actually happened. It's just like, oh man, that sucks.
Harrison says while he can't get his car back, he hopes the suspect will be found and brought to justice.
if there's a guy walking around just setting stuff on fire, like, come on, man, he needs to be taken off the street sooner than later, especially because I have friends in that area, and hopefully he's not capable of more than just larceny, but who we don't know.
Hairston says there's no plan to buy a new car. He says he's waiting to hear back from his insurance company to confirm they'll cover the damage.
I'm grateful, my friend, I'm safe, but if we can get that guy off the streets, I think that'd make me sleep a little better at night.
Spokane police say officers are investigating the situation as an act of arson. They ask anyone with any information on the suspect to call Crime Check. In Spokane, Janelle Finch, KREM 2 News.
So yeah, Hairston, the owner of the Model S, didn't even live on that part of Spokane. He was just visiting a friend. And the important point to mention here is the police first thought that the car caught on fire by itself because they're like, well, it's an EV, so you shouldn't be driving one of those. It was only because of his Sentry Cam footage that Hairston was able to convince the police otherwise. So make sure that if you have a Tesla, that your Sentry Cam is always on. You never know when you'll need the footage. You might go to your friend's house and be like, oh, I don't need it today. I'm at my friend's house. Just keep it running. Because, I mean, who would have expected just a crazy person to come up with gasoline and light his car on fire?
And can I just bring up EV Jacked for a moment?
Good point.
They did not pay to sponsor Patreon bonus stories. This is for you. You pay for it. I don't know.
Well, first, just remind people what it is if they haven't seen her in depth.
You're right. So if you haven't seen her in depth on this, you should really go check it out. So there's a problem with EVs, and that is that when you're plugged in, the car will not allow you to drive away. There is no manual override. There is no emergency escape mode. You are absolutely not able to drive away in your car when it is plugged in. Even if you stop charging, you are not able to drive away because the COM pins in the port will continue to communicate with the car, and the car is specifically programmed not to drive away. Makes sense because you don't want to accidentally put it in drive and rip the charger off the wall and ruin your charge port. But in the case of something like this, where let's say he was in the car and he was charging, I know in this case he wasn't, but there are cases where sketchy people will walk up to your car while you're in it and try to assault you. You can't drive away if the car is plugged in. You have to get out of your car and unplug it, which is something you really don't want to do if someone is approaching your vehicle, or if there's a number of different reasons why you don't want that to happen. What this magic little thing allows you to do is it's a Tesla adapter, so it's got the Tesla plug here and a Tesla plug here, so the female and male plugs into your car, and what it will do is when you stop charging, it will disconnect the COM connection between the car and the charger.
Right, so now Tesla thinks you're not plugged in.
And then this is a sacrificial piece. It will break as you drive it away. And I'm not saying that I don't want you to ever need this.
Right. And most people won't.
Hopefully nobody will ever need this.
But that's the thing. Hairston didn't ever think that a guy would walk. If I had said, and today be very careful, be very alert for people walking around with gas cans that might put your car on fire, I never would have guessed that.
I'm not trying to make you scared. Right. I don't want you to be scared. I know that some people have solutions to this. I mean, I carry like a metal whip thing, which I got really scared one day, and I went on the internet and I was like, I want something to defend myself. I don't want a gun because I don't want to kill anybody. I know a lot of people say
you just want to irritate them.
Oh, it hurts. It hurts.
Okay.
I watched like an MMA guys, and they were just like,
yeah,
okay,
but what if an MMA guy is the guy who's coming up to you?
So it's not a good solution. You think that's a good solution?
No,
it's
I
not.
don't.
No, it is not a good solution.
That's what I'm saying.
Exactly. I don't want a gun. I don't want to like whip out a knife or something.
You just want to get out of town.
I want to get out of town. This is what I wanted, really. And I couldn't come up with the solution because I came back from my supercharging trip on the top of this thing, and I was just super worried about it. And I was like, what if I needed to defend myself? Now I don't. I can just drive the heck away. And I know if you have a gun and you think that that's going to be the solution, there are a lot of cases where if you shoot somebody, you're going to go to prison,
right? Because
you didn't have the right to shoot them. A car is not your house.
Right.
In many states, they have a citadel law, right? Where if somebody breaks into your house, you have every right in the world to shoot them dead, right? Okay, right? Because you're defending yourself in your house. Your car doesn't get the same level of protection So you would go to jail for murder or for, attempted murder or something like that, even if it's in self-defense. And yet, do you want to have to go to court and argue against someone who came up to your car?
You're also talking about things where it's like, okay, a guy who's going to like stab you. I'm just talking about times when it's something a gun wouldn't help you with, like fire. Guns don't help you with fire. You just need to leave.
Right. Or if the Charger catches on fire, it has happened before. I'm not saying
or a guy with a gun. I mean, if you have a gun and he has a gun, it's probably just better to get out of there rather than to try a shootout.
Or ahead of time, before the person gets too close.
Right.
And you're
exactly.
saying,
You see that sketchy van or car coming up, you just get out of there.
You just forget it. Look, does it for everyone? No, it's just look. I talked to a woman in Wisconsin. She said, I'm worried about charging at Chargers at night.
Did you see all the comments we got on our video? All the people who said exactly what you're saying. So, it's a problem.
I'm not saying that this is going to be the solution forever. Do I think that Tesla should solve the solution? Yes, I think every car company should.
Well, and here's the other sad part. A lot of people are now catching up to the fact that when an EV is plugged in, it can't go. And so I'm sorry to say this, but there's a lot of bad humans out there. And when they know that there's a little hack in life, they take advantage of it. So if they know, oh, you can't leave, you have to roll your window down and talk to me, that's not a good place to be in. But if these start popping up and they're like, oh, I guess EVs can leave, then we'll have kind of proved that wrong. And I hope that Tesla just starts licensing this technology.
Right. And it's like,
it's brilliant. Like, I don't want to pat ourselves on the back too much, but you put out the challenge. This company, EVject, came and solved it. And so I really love our community. I think that they did a great job.
Yeah. And if this can save one life, that's all I care about. Yeah. It's just something in your arsenal. Maybe you have, a machine gun in your car too. But if you can just avoid the whole situation,
then you have choices.
Yeah. That's all I want you to have.
If you do get it and you do use it, please send us either video or, a little description of how it helped you. Because I'd love to hear about it. And if you want to save 30% on it, they've let us give this discount to our viewers. It's now, 30. So go to evject.com, use our discount code, you'll get 30% off. All right. So next up is Tesla price cuts aren't working. Fred Lambert over at Electrek, he had an article about this past week. And I was like, oh, really? Oh, my God. I was like, oh, no. Look at this data, Jesse, from Matt Young. Now, we'll put his website down below. And thank you to Matt, by the way, for compiling all this inventory data from Tesla's website. I'm not mad at Matt. This is just data.
So this, to be clear, is showing new in existing inventory Tesla vehicles listings for Model S, 3, X, and Y available in the United States on Tesla's website. So let's be very specific and very clear as to what exactly we're saying.
So at first glance, this looks bad, right? About 2,600 Teslas in inventory, and it's been going up since the beginning of the year. But let's dive deeper. Here are all 4 models in different colors. So Model 3 in red, Model Y in blue, Model S in green, and Model X in orange. Do you see the problem? I think it's even easier to spot if I show you this stacked bar chart.
So the problem appears to be the Model X?
Exactly. And the Model 3 is also growing a bit, but the S and the Y are not building up in inventory much at all. So the Model X does seem to be building up in inventory.
But now we're talking about inventory. I thought that Tesla just started building the car once you order it.
Maybe. You see, there are far fewer choices now. And so unlike when I bought my Model X back in 2015, there were like a zillion choices of like, what type of wood veneer would you like for the interior accents and premium sound versus standard? Today, other than the 3 powertrain options, the 5 color options, and the 2 interior seat colors, and of course, there's 2 wheel choices, but those are easily swapped. Tesla can just make a bunch of each variant, especially since they have tons of data on what's been selling, and they can kind of get ahead of the curve, so to speak.
But is that what this data is showing? Or is this those cars that Tesla makes for customers, and then they don't end up buying them for whatever reason, and then that's how they end up in inventory?
Right. So that's kind of my guess. I'll bet a lot of Model X inventory buildup are people who bought the Model X online, paid the deposit to get the build started, and then they haven't taken delivery because either they couldn't get financing, which we talked about, or they just couldn't afford it. Either way, I don't think this points to a lack of demand. If it did, we'd see all the models building up in inventory. I also believe that this is what Tesla does to make shipping cars more efficient. So I don't know if any of these cars are ones that they're going to plan to ship. Maybe they're not, but about 4,000 to 5,000 cars fit on a ship at any time. So building up less than a ship's worth hardly seems like something to get all worked up about. Now, look, if there was 20, 30, 40,000, Teslas getting built up, I'd be like, oh, crap. I don't think when we're talking about such small numbers and you have bigger and bigger gigafactories, I think that's what they're forgetting here. In the past couple of years, we just had Fremont making most of the cars.
Mm-hmm.
Now we've got Berlin, Shanghai, Texas. So if each of those factories builds a couple hundred extra here and there, that's where you're going to start to see this. Plus, your market's growing. I think a lot of people forget that. Isn't the Tesla market just a few rich people? No.
Right.
As the price of the car comes down, more and more of the world opens up. So you do want more inventory.
Well, and also, they sold over 1 million cars last year.
Yeah, 1.3 million.
So, and it's been steadily growing. So, wouldn't it make sense that you have more cars in inventory?
I think it's more important, exactly, to show this 2600 in relation to what you're selling. That would show a percentage, and that's what I think here. A lot of people who don't know about data are like, look, rising graph. Yeah,
but it's rising with the trend.
How about this? If we had a little island, okay, and a bunch of people crash landed in a boat on the island, and in the first year there's 10 people. And they had, they had 100 coconuts in their inventory. And then babies are born, more people, 100 years later, you got 1,000 people. The number of coconuts should be going up. But you should do it in proportion to the population.
It's like if we looked at Tesla service appointments.
Right.
And if you graph that, it would be going up.
Right.
Are Teslas getting worse? Or are there just more cars on the road?
Right.
So I think that's kind of my take on this.
Right.
I don't see this being a big problem.
Also,
we can keep watching
and
it.
here's kind of proof. See that spike right there about, I think that was about a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
That was before a quarter. That was a quarter end. And, Tesla typically a while back was doing that where they'd build up inventory and then sell them all before the end of the quarter. Do you see how quickly it went from a big number to a small number? That means that Tesla can move cars. And so to make a big deal about this and be like, oh my God, they're just not selling. I just don't think it's the problem. It might indicate something, but it's not. I don't think it's demand problem. I think that's and if it was true, then for years we'd have a demand problem. I'm just so sick of hearing this. It's so annoying. Check this story out. On 24th of April at about 6 p.m. local time, a cargo ship called the Petra L, registered in Antigua, collided with a wind turbine at Ørsted's Gode 1 offshore wind farm. No persons were injured in the incident.
This is the first known incident of a cargo ship hitting a wind turbine.
So the 55-turbine Gode 1 offshore wind farm is about 45 kilometers off the German coast. The cargo ship was carrying 1,500 tons of Polish grain going to Belgium.
The German water police reported that it sustained massive damage in the form of a 3 by 5 meter hole in its starboard side. So that's the ship.
Yeah, so you're seeing this video now of the ship limping into shore. Luckily, it didn't sink. The ship reported water ingress, or a leak, but was able to make it to the port of Emden in Germany on April 25th. So a lot of people are using this opportunity to say things like, I knew it. I knew these damn wind turbines were going to do this, to start creeping up on ships in the middle of the night and smashing holes in them. I knew it.
So I would just like to point out that the Russian captain of the Petra L did not report the incident. And it appears that it was Ørsted that found out that their wind turbine had been hit and reported it.
Yeah.
So that way the German water police could find them.
Yeah. So basically what happened was middle of the night, data comes in like, oh, one of our wind turbines stopped working. They called up like camera footage or sent out a drone and they're like, oh, somebody hit our turbine. Now, it appears that the ship was in autopilot, not Tesla autopilot. And my guess is that this captain should have his license removed, because if you ram into something, we're talking about something the size of the Statue of Liberty, right? So, to not see it, it has lights on it. I mean, and
you got a big spinning thing. Hey, yeah. I'm over here.
Also on a map, you know where you are. You know that you're near a wind farm.
Right. He had GPS. Mm-hmm. He wasn't out there with his sextant going like, all right, where's the North Star?
And then he hits it and he's like, let's just keep going. No one will notice. So look, not cool. I really think that instead of saying that it's the wind turbine's fault, that we have to start realizing that there's certain captains who shouldn't be captains.
Because we shouldn't have lighthouses because people could hit them. Exactly. We got to make sure that these waters don't. Hey, you got a bridge? Hey, no way, man.
And also, if you have trouble steering away from a wind turbine, then keep you away from my port, because there's like boats and Jesus Christ, that's not.
So anyway, if you hear someone talking about it, you know that it was someone who wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, This is the first reported, and I know if you're in the United States, you're like, offshore wind is new. It is not new in Europe.
Nope.
It is not new.
No, and this captain probably makes the same voyage all the time.
They have had wind turbines in Europe for like 15 years.
Right.
This is the first reported case.
And let me just say, you put a ship in autopilot. Autopilot doesn't mean that it has cameras and it turns the ship. Autopilot means, go this heading at this speed. That's all it is. So you don't leave the bridge and you don't drink. And that's my guess.
All right, let's move on to this next story. Senate Republicans, along with Joe Manchin, in a 50-49 vote, have voted to reverse the first update to heavy truck pollution standards in 22 years.
So the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, update would reduce nitrogen oxide emissions by 48%, and it's estimated to save thousands of lives and tens of billions of dollars by 2045. The EPA's rule will take effect starting in model year 2027.
So Republicans who want to reverse that argue that compliance costs would be too high, but calculations show that the net benefits of the rule would be positive.
Senate Democrats and Kristen Sinema voted to keep the new regulations in place, while Dianne Feinstein missed the vote. President Joe Biden is expected to veto the reversal.
Heavy-duty trucks are a primary contributor to harmful air pollution, with light-duty trucks making up the majority of global warming emissions.
Now, Senator Deb Fischer, the Republican from Nebraska, said that the past regulations have worked so very well that we don't need new ones. And besides, this would cost about $2,500 per truck, so that's why she voted against it. On the flip side to Senator Fischer's argument, the EPA's 2027 rule would save 2,900 lives, prevent 18,000 cases of childhood asthma, and prevent 6,700 hospital admissions. It would also lead to 78,000 fewer lost days of work, 1.1 million fewer lost school days, and save $29 billion per year by 2045. And when accounted for in net present value, the benefits are greater than the cost today.
The House will also probably likely pass this, but as we said, Biden has said that he will veto it.
So why vote for it, especially since it wouldn't have passed if Dianne Feinstein had been there?
So they can go back to their districts and tell their constituents, I tried to stop the EPA.
Well, good for you, you hypocritical, corrupt bastards. Hypocritical because I'm sure those 50 senators all live in really nice, clean neighborhoods. How would they like heavy trucks spewing PM 2.5 and PM 10 particles all over their airspace? They wouldn't. They're doing this because they knew it wouldn't have any effect, and they could just tell their constituents, well, I tried to stop it. I didn't want your truck to go up in price. Look, trucks are giant, expensive things. $2,500 may sound like a lot, but it's amortized over years and years and years. If that truck puts out less, and look, did I mention any greenhouse gases here? No, I didn't, because I believe that that's a good benefit of this. But I'm talking about the stuff that affects your lungs and your brain. Okay, no one can argue against that. Even if you think that climate change is a hoax, you can't argue that you don't want to be behind one of those trucks on the highway or live in a neighborhood where they're driving all the time. And this is, the senator already admitted that the past regulations were great. Why do we need more? Because things have changed and we can make better trucks now.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we get into this story about this secret NEVS Emily GT car project, we have to start with Saab.
Yeah, so Saab was a Swedish airplane manufacturer, which began producing cars in 1949, and it expanded to the U.S. in 1956. After that, General Motors acquired Saab in 2000. The relationship didn't last long because GM isn't very good running companies. And in 2010, the Dutch automaker Spyker bought Saab.
However, Saab Automobile finally declared itself bankrupt in 2011 after several months of struggling to stay afloat.
The following year, National Electric Vehicle Sweden, or NEVS, a Swedish car maker that came under the ownership of a Chinese real estate giant, Evergrande Group, yes, that Evergrande Group, they bought the assets in 2019. So it's basically a Chinese company. NEVS is, even though it says Swedish in the title, it's kind of like Geely buying Polestar and Volvo. It's owned by Evergrande.
So NEVS, which owns Saab, and Evergrande have both faced financial difficulties in recent years, leading to the closure of product development activities this month.
Translation? They need to sell anything they can to raise some cash. So they are selling the IP, or the intellectual property, of this secret project. So now let's get to the secret project they've been working on, which is also by the way.
NEVS, which owns Saab's automotive assets, developed a secret electric sports car called NEVS Emily GT before closing product development activities.
So this is bullshit. What this is this. So take a look at this. This is back, we talked about this on the show back in, I think, 2017. It was going to be Saab's 9-3. It's going to be their first electric car. So what I think they did is They took former senior Saab engineer and current NEV's program director, Peter Dahl. They put him in charge of the project. They put 420 horsepower electric motors for a total of 480 horsepower. And they have an updated version that works with a 653 horsepower, 2,200 Newton meters of torque. And it's powered by a 175 kilowatt hour battery that can travel over 1,000 kilometers on a full charge. In my opinion, that's bullshit. What they did was they took the 9.3, which had a 52 kilowatt hour battery pack. They shoved it full of batteries. They put a little bit bigger motors on it to make it seem like they had this awesome like sports car thing. And now they're trying to sell the IP rights. I don't think anyone in the space is dumb enough to buy this, because anyone in the space has probably already looked at things like this and they realize you can't put that big a battery pack into a sports car. Like, that's bigger than our Ford battery pack of 143 kilowatt hours. So that doesn't work. They only did it to get this, 1,000 kilometers of range.
It's really sad.
It's sad.
Yeah.
It's just sad that, I mean,
You have a well-respected car company,
they
Saab.
had 350 engineers working on this. They could have come up with the Saab years ago. Again, it's just like all these other companies we talked about. Years ago, you're like, we're going to come up with this great car. It's a Tesla killer. Great. Where is it? Never came out.
Right.
And let's talk about another company that's going to be dead for sure. Check this out. Toyota's new CEO, Koji Sato, has released a 3-step strategy for electric vehicles to make up for lost time and significantly enhance productivity and profitability by the year 2030. Okay, step 1, what is it?
The first phase, which includes the BZ4X, did not get off to a good start, but the company claims to have learned from its missteps.
Wait, so his 3-step plan is to admit that the first step failed?
That was step 1. Did you like it?
To admit failure?
That was step 1.
Okay.
Fail.
Step two.
The second phase will begin in 2025 when the company completes a new EV platform, by which point its production capacity globally will have grown to 1.5 million units annually. So I don't know how you go from making like 17 BZ4Xs that the wheels fall off to producing 1.5 million units annually in 2 years.
Okay, step three.
Step 3, the last phase will use new EVs to unlock new revenue opportunities, business models, and product development cycles. By 2030, Toyota plans to sell around 3.5 million EVs globally. However, the automaker is still not abandoning its hydrogen tech ambitions. So,
oh man. So here's what I think. I just want to sum up here. So the BZ4X project is dead. Toyota will keep its hydrogen program, and Toyota will be out of the auto business by 2030. I am calling it right now. Look, people have said to me, like, how do you know? Well, this is it. The new CEO just gave you a plan. If you heard that plan in a meeting, would you be like, oh, great, this sounds like a great plan? No, I think you guys know enough about EVs by now to know that just saying something will happen in 2 years. We'll have 1.5 million EVs in 2025. First of all, Tesla has 1.3 million last year. So you're already admitting that in 2 years, you'll be behind them. And you're saying that by 2030, which is 7 years away, so let's just believe your plan. You will have 3.5 million EVs globally in 7 years. Do you know how many Tesla's going to have? 10 to 20 million. Easy. I'm guessing more on the 20 million side. So they're going to be eating your lunch by 7x.
right.
Even according to your own plan.
And that's step 3.
And that's step 3. That's your final step.
Yeah.
What this is, and I don't want to blame the CEO because he basically moved up
He's
through.
new.
He's new. And I
Poor
think
guy.
he's a sacrificial. I think what it is this. They got rid of Toyota, put him in the chairmanship. They get to put this new sacrificial guy there. And when he doesn't succeed, you won't be able to blame the grandson of Toyota. It'll be like, I wasn't on watch during this whole fiasco. Yeah, you were on watch for years and years and years leading up to the fiasco when you could have prepared.
I feel like there was this Looney Tunes cartoon where like Bugs Bunny was flying a plane and he like something bad's happening and he hits the autopilot button and the autopilot is like a thing and it jumps out of it's like a robot. It jumps out of the thing and it like looks at what's going on and it just like grabs a parachute and jumps out of the plane. I feel like that's what this is. Like,
This reminds me of so many things in history. I've just been learning about the beginnings of tanks. And for years before tanks were even needed on the battlefield, there were smart engineers around the world who were bringing tank designs to military leaders in Austria and Germany and going, how about this? And they were going, we don't need that. What do we need that for? Right? So then World War I starts, and even at the beginning of the war, they're like, we don't need that. The war will be over in a few months. It was only after the war had dragged on for 2 years, they're like, where the are the tanks? And what's funny is they went to Renault in France, and he already had some designs like on the shelf, and they're like, can you do something? He popped that tank out so fast for the Allies. And amazing design. Instead of the Germans, they were sticking like 18 people in a tank and it looked like you could hit it from a mile away. Renault's tank, man, holy crap, fast moving, 2 guys in it, amazing design. And he gave it to the French government. He's like, free, I'm not going to charge you. Amazing to see how some engineers get it, some leaders get it, and others, like here in Toyota, they just do. We don't need an EV.
We don't need EVs.
But hydrogen, though. Hydrogen, that's the future.
I feel like it's this very resting on your laurels kind of thing. They came out with the Prius, and the Prius was like the hybrid for so long, and everyone was just like, oh, Prius. And you must have just gotten just like, yeah, we rock.
There's also the yes man syndrome. Most of us in this world don't live in that world because we aren't surrounded by yes men. If you are, lucky you, maybe. You go out in the world every day and you say something, and if everyone just every day is like, yep, you're so smart. That's great. I'm going to write that down. We're going to do that. Then after a while, you're just like, wow, everything I say is just brilliant. Yep. And I think that's what happens. If you're a Toyota and you
if your name is Toyota
and you go into a meeting, everyone's like, yes, sir. Okay, sir. We'll do that, sir.
Whatever you want.
No one's going to be like, excuse me, sir. I think that's the most moronic idea I've ever heard.
We need more EVs. They're saying like, I'm not going to say anything to him.
Nope.
He's the grandson of Toyota. You think he's going to listen to me?
Exactly. So I think this week you saw, I'm calling it on Ford. I'm calling it on Toyota.
Yeah.
GM, I really don't think is going to last, but at least on paper, they're trying some new things. I don't think the Equinox or the Blazer is going to turn any heads. Maybe if you're a diehard Chevy fan, but I think those 2 cars are going to come up very bland. Maybe the Silverado. I'm going to withhold my judgment until we get ours, hopefully later this year. But I don't think it'll hold a candle to the Cybertruck.
I have to say, in living in a place where there are a lot of Teslas, the concentration of Teslas has been doubled, and I would say the past 6 months, maybe 4.
Yeah.
I'm not joking. I think I've said this before, but I have like a 10-minute commute to work. I know I'm very lucky, and I'm driving just through town. The number of Teslas parked in driveways, the number of white Model Ys that are parked in driveways that I pass on my 10-minute commute has more than doubled.
I want to tie this to one last thing here. Remember in our tweets of the week, we showed the very first tweet was a chart of income in the U.S. by ethnic group. Very top of the line was Indian Americans, and over $100,000 median income, household income. And I believe that group of people, hands down, is buying Teslas. And so I think that's another piece that the market auto analysts never talk about. It's certain groups of people, certain ethnic groups that they're not tied to old brands like Chevy.
And they're not reading Car and Driver and be like, hey, do you know what you want? They just go, oh, what's the best car that I can get for my family? I'm going to get it.
It's the safest, it's the cheapest. Like, that's what I'm getting.
I have no affiliations to any of these car brands. I'm not,
Hey, do you want to look like a cowboy?
Right.
Are you a cowboy?
It's like, no, I'm not. So I'm just going to buy a car that works good.
Whereas the average white American, I think, was $56,000 household income. So, I mean, yeah, Chevy and Ford, keep aiming at those people. That's not gonna help
it's
you.
It's really interesting. But yeah, I just think from a cultural perspective, you start seeing enough cars on the road and you're going to go, something's up with that.
Yep.
I need to look more into that. And I think that's going to lead you to people like us and other people in your life who could, who probably drive these things and are like, yeah, it's freaking awesome. Get in.
And look, you're already a patron, and I really appreciate it. But I just want to mention there are other perk levels. If you got in here like on the $1 level, which is great, thank you for supporting us. But we give so much more as the perk levels go up because we need the help. Let's be honest. Your support is what keeps us going. If you would consider joining us on the Patreon Investor Club, which is at the $10 level, and I know you're saying $10. Yeah. We try and bring you, today we did an hour-long show of stuff that we think will affect your investing. We bring you interviews with CEOs and founders of companies. We do live streams with them so that you can ask them questions. If just one of those things pans out for you, or if we steer you away from one thing you would have invested in that would have lost you money, I can tell you that $10 a month was well spent.
Hopefully. Yeah.
So I just urge you to check it out. Our Slack, I think, is well worth the price because we have very smart people over there looking into things that I don't know anything about. And they are down there like finding out details. It's an amazing place to be.
It's such a great, so our Slack is basically, Slack is, a place for teams is what they call it. And we have this just up-to-date thing with a bunch of people who are
know their
like
stuff.
you. They watch us. They understand Tesla.
And you can ask questions there. You can learn things, and you can also just get emotional support when Tesla's under 160 a share. Anyway, thank you so much for being our patrons. We'll see you guys next week. Now you know.